And thank you, Pratik, and to everybody that's obviously set the scene here today. And it is my pleasure to join you today. I am in the university at the moment, live from Oxford. It's a lovely rainy day outside, but what do you expect from the UK? However, it's wonderful to be with you, and I'm delighted to share with you the course, actually, that we are developing together. And the course itself is going to come from 4 lenses. I'm going to talk about it through the learner perspective, you as leaders, looking at institutions, and obviously our communities that we serve. So let me just share our slides here, just to make sure that everybody can see these okay. Wonderful. Okay.
Yes, perfect.
So I want to sort of initially start here with regards to the fact that this does indeed underpin the competency framework that Pratik was speaking about earlier. And there was a great deal of work that went into that competency framework, and we know that that has enabled us to be able to draw from a number of frameworks that have been sort of, quite globally constructed by governments. And that's been incredibly helpful, because not only do we have that, but we also have the support of the Spark AI Alliance, which of course is a UNESCO membership group, which involves VESPA and a number of different colleagues around the world that are helping us construct lenses in both the global north and of course the global south on the challenges that are faced by all governments in this sense. So one of the things we want to do is ensure that it is very global. We want to ensure that we have everybody's voices within the course. So you will see a number of different colleagues globally around the world featuring the course, and a number of case studies that will be relevant to the work that you are doing. Now, if I just zoom out a little bit from this slide deck and think about us as humans, the idea of us kind of learning in everyday life is just something we do naturally. We do something, we evaluate it or we reflect upon it, and then we adjust it. We might do it again and we do the same thing. And that's very much the active learning approach that we are taking on this course. The idea that you're going to be able to work through a number of different activities that require you to think about the diagnosis of the needs that may come up in some of the conversations you're having, thinking about learning more around those needs and understanding and discovering opportunities to address those needs through a specific public service, for example, where AI will be a part of that development. You can then apply this thinking by developing the service itself using some of the AI tools and some of the digital transformation tools. And then, of course, we're going to assess the effectiveness of that. And the course itself is informed by universal design for learning. So it is very much about everybody's background, everybody's level of expertise, and everybody's opportunity to access the learning content and learn from it and move through the course. So we want to be incredibly inclusive and incredibly accessible in this sense. And then we're looking at empowering learners. So what do we mean by that? Well, we're going to be using AI all the way through the course. We're not going to be looking at just the theory of AI. We will be learning by doing. And the idea there is that we'll be thinking about the way in which we use AI. Some of us may be very confident in the way we use AI. But of course, when we think about the confidence, we can then possibly add another tier of thought around how efficient are we as we are using AI. So the idea is getting us to write prompts, getting us to think about how we're refining those prompts, and how we're refining, therefore, the output of the AI that we are actually receiving as we use it. We're looking at how we can simulate scenarios. We're also looking at how we think about, sort of the limitations of those scenarios. So we're doing a lot of critical thinking here as well. And we're thinking about how AI can contribute truly to the design of any public services that we put in place. I will go through the curriculum a little bit more, but just looking here, what we're thinking also about is the bias within AI. So again, I mentioned earlier about representation of case studies from around the world. a number of, I guess, hazards that have happened in education previously have been where we've taken models from the global north and we've tried to apply them in the global south. A lot of the AI programming that goes on at the moment is from global north perspectives. So we are very aware that we need to identify the biases within those models and how we train models to make them most effective as we are building our public services. So you will be coming through this with a lot of tools, a lot of templates, and a lot of opportunities to bring a portfolio with you back into your team and to your organization. And so just looking at the next slide, what we'll then be doing is making the course very adaptable. So the idea here is, because we've had a lot of opportunity to connect with members of the Spark Alliance, we are able to begin to develop tools, templates, and activities to enable you to bring plans back into your local context, because you'll be applying all of this to your local context as you move through the program. Our job is to build confidence, not to overwhelm you. So we want to be able to bring you a sort of succinctly developed set of capabilities as you walk through the program that you are gaining confidence in as you move from module to module. And as we look at the different modules, we have 6 core modules here. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to go through these in a little bit more detail to give you an idea of how you'll be working. The very first module is very much around understanding your organization's landscape with regards to digital transformation and AI initiatives, and also connecting them back to your role. How does your role connect to both of these things? How are you thinking about the digital economy? So obviously the way that the digital transformation is being powered by AI is clearly changing the factors that are building the digital economy and evolving the digital economy. How are those things impacting the way in which you have to think and the service that you have to deliver? Again, we can take example of the private sector, the way the private sector is moving forwards. How does that impact the way in which you are thinking at the moment within your own institutions? And we start to think about the challenges and how these are going to have to be addressed, but also thinking about your own department's digital and AI readiness as a basis for setting more agile strategic priorities as we move through. So, and then we go to module 2, and we want to think about data. There was a lot of governance, and I know Pratik mentioned this, that came up on the interactive slides earlier on, which was very interesting to see. So we're looking at the benefits and risks of data-driven decision-making in your context, thinking a lot about data-related concepts themselves. We'll look at frameworks that you can use to classify and reflect upon data workflows within your team and department. And we're going to think about mechanisms to leverage in the various stages of the data lifecycle as we're looking at governance and protection. Now, what we're also then going to do is move to module 3. So this is very much around thinking of the ethical concepts and common risks associated with AI in our departments. There are a lot of ethical dilemmas, trade-offs in the real world application. It's great to investigate, kind of these in our own context, thinking about, how does AI actually add value? What are the limitations of AI? Actually, what can't it do in regards to our specific strategic intents? And then we want to think about, the ethical sensitivity that AI needs to adopt when we're looking at various scenarios. So there will be frameworks to help us sort of move through this. And then we go to module 4. And this is really around sort of digital governance. So we're looking at sort of oversight frameworks, laws, policies, regulations here. When I'm speaking with members of the Alliance, I am asking for opportunities to share existing policies to help us all consider the ways in which we're all addressing these various different concerns and how potentially we might be able to learn from each other. And then we're thinking, of course, about sort of, I guess, this all in a systems thinking context. So we want to identify opportunities, we want to identify challenges, but we also want to identify gaps in our context with regards to the governance itself. And then we want to think about the design of how we actually apply our thinking to addressing those gaps. And there will be a number of frameworks to help us consider how we do that. And of course, that is all under a veil of, just kind of constructively critiquing our department's digital governance approach and thinking about how we, as learners, as leaders, can suggest strategic improvements to those. And then we're going on to module 5 because, I guess one of the things we always think about here is, transformation is best when we can understand the drivers of the change beneath it. And the technology enables us to change, but actually it's people-centric that we are really having to hone in on here and focusing on here. So how are we people-centric in our leadership of leading people through change, where digital transformation and AI is involved? And we have a lot of human-centered design methods that we can look at here, and also thinking about the inclusion of different user groups as we do this. So we'll look at AI tools. AI tools can help us simulate user perspectives. Pratik was talking about simulating traffic patterns. And again, in the same way, we can think about our user perspectives through using some of these tools. And then really by module 6, again, we can look at broader kind of macro factors that contribute to successful digital transformation. We can think about cyber awareness, we can think about resilience, we can think about effective leadership, again, building on module 5, but looking at broader digital initiatives. And then finally, we can recommend leadership strategies in the ways in which we assess and we respond to digital transformations. So one more thing for me to share with you is this education is building for you to scale your education in your own domains. And what I mean by that is, you'll see here, we are building this all in a Creative Commons license context. And so you are able to reuse the IP. You're able to remix it, you're able to redistribute it. Obviously, we ask that you acknowledge the original creator of it, but it's for you to adapt to your own context in the best way possible for you.